Because those that are wanting to that virality, as you said,
Yeah.
that one pop that gets them all the way to the end, that's, that's not realistic.
It's not realistic, and and then once that happens, all of a sudden now you're chasing the next viral,
Yeah,
right? Which means you take your eye off the ball of actually serving.
that's correct.
You know, if you serve well, you'll be rewarded well. Let me say that again. If you serve well, you will be rewarded well.
Yeah. Well, that's what Jesus taught. He's like, hey, man, the greatest among you is a servant. Like the one who serves is the one who's going to be great. Now, the world doesn't tell you that. The world doesn't immediately reward that. But at the end of the day, I think everybody who sat across this table from me on this podcast would fall into that camp of, I served a lot of people, did a lot of things, and I'm now sitting in a place of success that I wouldn't have been able to get to had I not served. Now, the irony of that is that I maybe with rare exception, people don't seek to serve for the purpose of getting the reward.
In today's ultra-competitive business world, being a successful entrepreneur or business owner can be very challenging. Fortunately, contemporary times have blessed us with resources for tackling those challenges and getting us to success more quickly than we could have imagined. Welcome to The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan, a podcast that explores how the world's most powerful entrepreneurs grow incredible companies. This podcast looks at the 5 keys to unlocking success as an entrepreneur. A successful educator turned entrepreneur, Jason's mission is to use his gifts of teaching and leadership to help others get the results they want out of life. Join Jason every week and learn the keys to grow a truly successful business.
Welcome back to another edition of The Root of All Success. Just like you heard in the introduction, I interview successful entrepreneurs just like the guest that's sitting across from me right now here at the Standard Club in Nashville, Tennessee. We're going to find out about his story. I'll introduce him in just a minute, but I want to thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being on any podcast player that you're listening to this on. Thank you to the C-Suite Radio Network for being able to syndicate us and wanting us to be part of their syndication network. We're honored to be part of that, and that's why you can hear us on any podcast player. Please subscribe and make sure that you leave us a 5-star review if you think we're worthy of it. And if not, send me an email. Let's talk. I want to get the show where it's worthy of 5 stars. And as of the recording today, all we have is 5-star reviews. So thank you, listeners, for making that happen. It's very important to me to make sure I deliver good, amazing content. And if you haven't watched this on YouTube, I want to encourage you to go do that. So we record these live and in person. 90% of the time, these are live and in person right here in Nashville, Tennessee at the Standard Club, which is 18,000 square feet of Southern sophistication and style, owned and operated by the one and only Josh Sterling Smith. It's a fantastic club I'm honored to be a member of, and we're today recording in the Rhino Room on 2 big, amazing, cool-looking leather couches. And when you go look at this on YouTube, you can kind of see a little bit, get a flavor of the room. So make sure you go to youtube.com/The Real Jason Duncan, and make sure that you watch us there, subscribe, hit the bell icon, you know the whole drill. But thank you for doing that. Honestly, right now, as of this recording, more people are watching and listening to this on YouTube than any of the podcast players, which is fantastic. So thank you for doing that as well. The episode sponsor for today is 8 Bend Marketing. 8 Bend Marketing is a firm that caters specifically to people just like you. They take words and messages seriously for the small business owner. 8 Bend worked with one of my coaching clients, and they did such a great job. I didn't know who they were. I hadn't had any introduction, but when my client came back with their new messaging script and the way that they were positioning themselves in the marketplace, I was blown away. I was like, who did this? This is fantastic. It was the clearest messaging I'd ever seen for any small company. And he told me it was 8 Bend Marketing. So I immediately reached out to the owner, talked to them. I said, listen, I need to know who you are, because words are so important. And what 8 Bend does is they work with you as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner, to craft that message so that it converts. Because just having a cool message doesn't mean anything if it doesn't convert. So what I want to do is I want to offer you the opportunity, because they're sponsoring this episode today, is to go work with them and get a discount on their branding and messaging package. So they are certified as a StoryBrand company. So if you're familiar with StoryBrand, they're one of the top marketing companies in the country that's certified as StoryBrand with Donald Miller's company. So go to 8Bend, that's the number 8, BEND, .marketing, That's 8bend.marketing/root, as in root of all success. And if you go there, 8bend.marketing/root, they have a special offer for you to work with them directly to get your messaging correct. So thank you to 8bend, Josh, and all those guys down there in Chattanooga, Tennessee for sponsoring our episodes. All right, so all that. Now let's get on with the show. So I'm really excited to have this guy on the show today. He and I are sitting here having a little bit of good old bourbon whiskey, Guidance bourbon whiskey here, which is a Nashville brand here at the Standard. And I met this guy through a mutual contact and was really impressed with what he stands for and the energy with which he reaches out to and helps his people. And so we talked on the phone, gosh, it's been several months ago, and he hails from Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, and decided to come over to Nashville to record this. But his name is Stephen Scoggins, and this guy has an amazing background of helping Fortune 500 leaders, professional athletes, entrepreneurs, high performers that want to do great things with their life. He is the founder of TransformU, which is a proprietary life mastery system, and I'm sure he's going to talk about that today. He's written books, he's spoken on big stages. He has a great podcast of his own, which I'm going to let him talk about as well. And he has an event center over in North Carolina in the Raleigh-Durham area where he is hosting events now, and he's going to talk about what he's doing with that. But this guy is a powerhouse, and I'm honored to have him on the show. He's married, has 3 kids, and 1 grandchild. And once you see him on YouTube, you're gonna be like, that dude doesn't have a grandkid. But he does. He does. And his grandson's named Jason, just like me. I don't think that has anything to do with me. But I want to welcome Stephen Scoggins to the show. Stephen, I know that there are so many more things that I could have done in your intro to go over the details of all the stuff that you've done, because you've been published in EO Fire, Entrepreneur Magazine, Thrive Global, Grit Daily, ABC, NBC, all the press. You've been out there. So tell me, man, how did you get started as an entrepreneur?
Oh, Lord have mercy. Long story. Not only am I, by the way, I'm a grandfather. I'm a grandfather on the way as well. I have another grandchild on the way.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Cheers to that.
That's right. Born in about another month. So, no, it's for me, I don't have the normal entrepreneur journey. Like, I didn't have a dream and ambition or something just amazing. I was going to go create this massive organization. Unfortunately for me, I did it out of necessity. I was given a second chance when I was homeless to actually start over. My father's employer, a guy by the name of Steve Myrick, gave me a second chance I didn't deserve. And it's important to know that the year prior to the year being homeless, I was actually riding the high. This guy put me into business for myself. He got me all the equipment, and I come up in a construction background, so he got me everything that I needed to kind of get going. I made a bunch of money really fast. 19 years old, have no idea how to use money wisely, didn't really possess the character, hadn't really had a great modeling system of what that character really looks like. And inevitably, what happens with success when you don't have the character to carry it, you get crushed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where my story really started. However, it's one of those situations where I began to understand the areas that I need to work on literally while I was face down on the concrete trying to figure out how to get my life back together.
So some guy helped you, Myrick, you said Steve Myrick?
Steve Myrick, yeah.
Steve Myrick helped you start a business at 19 years old?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
well, here's the crazy thing is, like, as a teenager, nights, weekends, summers, whenever I was not at school, right? My father unfortunately struggled with alcoholism and managing money and some other stuff. Now he's a fantastic great grandfather and grandfather now. Like he's over and above, like he's transformed his own life, right? And I'm super proud of him. But in those particular days, I got to know Steve as a young child. Probably 13 or 14 years old, I was probably introduced to him the first time. And about the age of 16 or 17, for whatever reason, he noticed my work ethic. I've always been a crazy hard worker, like super diligent, not necessarily super focused on where I was putting that work at, right? But super resilient, super persevering by nature. And ultimately, he pulled me down with the framing crew one time. I was working on, it was a hot summer day. And of course, it's like hot summer. This guy's sitting in a Jeep Grand Cherokee. It's fully air conditioned. So you're like, he invites you to come sit in the thing. You're like, heck, yes.
Yeah.
I need AC.
Give me some AC.
Yeah, give me the AC, baby.
And was this in North Carolina? This is where you grew up?
This is in North Carolina, yeah. So, I didn't realize it, but check this out. My grandfather actually used to employ Steve, right? So in this moment, he's kind of sharing some of these stories, and then he asked me a very pivotal question to me in that moment, which it didn't really take root on until a number of years later, but he said, what's the difference between a rich man and a poor man? And I was like, well, Duh, man, shoot, money. Of course it's money, man. Rich people got money, poor people don't. Money. He said, absolutely not. It's the way they think. And the next question he asked me after that was very, 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 very transformative. He said, do you want to learn to think like me, or do you want to learn to think like your father? Now, if you let that sink in, that's like the tale of two heroes, right? You got somebody that's living in an area of lack and poverty mindset, and you got another person who's very affluent, very generous, also very astute businessman. Like I remember this one time, Steve Myrick actually kicked the local police department off his street because they were honking the horn for him to move his car. He's like, "You move, it's my street, I own it." This kind of thing. He's also the same guy to put $1,000 cash under a basket of hush puppies at a local barbecue restaurant, walk out the door, never say a word, and you walk out and you let a single waitress come up to the table, discover the money, and just get wrecked, right? So I knew in that moment that there was something about him that I wanted to emulate. But like everybody else that struggles with a life of adversity early on, it takes a long time to overcome certain levels of belief systems. And I think, if I'm honest with you, that's where my entrepreneurship journey started, was the sheer fact that I didn't really know what I should be doing. I didn't know how I should be doing it, so I did the only thing that came natural to me. And that's when I began to start the progress of changing who I am, changing the belief systems, and building something hopefully amazing.
So your journey as an entrepreneur really started with the mindset shift that day, that hot day in the Jeep Grand Cherokee.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's where it started. But here's the crazy part is, it didn't really take root. It's like, I think we all struggle with this, and maybe you'll resonate with this. We have people that give us great advice, right? We're not really ready to hear it, right? We're not really ready to apply it. And sometimes it takes 2 or 3 years, and someone like myself who's super stubborn, right, to finally hear it and apply it. So while he planted the seed, it took a good 5 years for that thing to turn into an oak tree.
Yeah. Well, and you were 19?
I was 19.
Yeah. Well, 5 years is pretty fast if you're 19.
Well, I was forced to drop out of high school, help family take care of themselves. I say forced. I chose.
Yeah.
I chose to drop out of high school. I was tired of our electricity getting shut off. I was tired of watching the insects crawl across the floor. I was tired of waking up to cold showers when we're supposed to have hot water. And, I was tired of not having a family vehicle. And my dad was working as hard as he possibly could, right? This is back during the first downturn back in the late 90s. And, dude, I think it was just one of those situations, enough's enough. It's like, I guess I'm going to have to step out and do something. And that's kind of where the journey started. And I think that's one of the reasons that people resonate so much with Transform You and some of the things that we're doing, is because I've discovered that the greatest purpose in life you'll ever have is serving the person you used to be. Now, let that sink in for a second.
No, that's good. Stop.
Yeah.
I'm processing that. Serving the person you used to be. That's deep, man. Go ahead. That's good.
Well, I mean, if you think it, let's unpack it for a second, right? Because I know this is a big part of what you're doing with your show and with your personal brand and everything that you're doing, and why people are gravitating towards you, right? When you serve the person you used to be, you have a unique perspective of empathy, compassion, and integrity that otherwise cannot be found in the marketplace, right? I was talking to a good friend of mine yesterday on a telephone briefly, and we were going through it a little bit, and he's like, why are you able to develop a workforce that nobody else can develop? I said, well, because I don't see them as a workforce, I see them as people. So everybody else is writing off people in the foster care system. They're writing off people that are homeless. They're writing off people that have had really difficult financial track records, all this kind of stuff, right? Well, as you dig into that, one of the things you quickly discover is one of the reasons that my personal message resonates with them is because I understand how it feels to be them. Therefore, I can speak certain elements of the language within that people group. And I use the word people group loosely, meaning people who have never experienced financial freedom, okay? That also uniquely positions me in an environment that allows me to not only connect with them, but also speak life into them and then give them the tactical functions on how to break free. Time Magazine did a Harris poll in 2017. They redid a kind of a refresh right as COVID was happening. And they discovered that 67% of the American population would basically say that they're living unfulfilled, unhappy, lost, alone, some level of my life is not what I want it to be.
What percent was that?
67%.
Wow.
Right? I think the recent number of the recent census for 2020 was like 360 million Americans. All right? If you let that sink in, that means 270-ish million people around this country are going through the motions. They're living based on the outlook of what's happened in the previous day, but yet they're not actually discovering what needs to change because they're so focused on where they have been that they're unable to articulate where they want to go. And when you understand that and can bring that back to serving the person you used to be, you understand two very important things. First of all, in order to serve the person you used to be, you have to become more than you are now. All right, so that's number one. The second thing is, in order to serve the person you used to be, you have to understand that there's a greater purpose in helping someone who is currently where you were with what you've experienced, what you've learned, and help you avoid the same roadblocks and things like that to overcome it. When you understand that, all of a sudden the search for purpose becomes a lot brighter, a lot easier, because even if you're in the middle of it, right? If you're in the middle of the struggle right now, that means that you're exactly where you need to be. You're learning what you need to know now so you can serve the person you used to be later.
You know, I did a little funny Instagram Reels video yesterday, and I posted on YouTube and TikTok and everything. You know how we do what we do. We put content on all the but I did this funny little thing about how every entrepreneur is just super rich and has all the free time in the world, and they and that was that's how I finished the video. I'm just laughing because no, that's not true. Now, but here's the thing. So perspective, the people that you're serving today as a speaker, as an author, as a coach, the people that you're serving, a lot of those are cynical, jaded people that won't accept your help because they think, well, that dude's just a rich guy. He's got a $10 million company, blah, blah, blah. He doesn't know what it's like. But you could say, no. Listen, man, I lived in a house with no electricity at times. I had bugs crawling on. I didn't know where I was going to get my next meal. You've lived that. Yeah. So why do you think some people cling to that victim mentality and stay in that spot, and some people break out of it?
Well, let me real quick story. My father's first business, unfortunately, didn't succeed. You know, he had a growing business. Turns out taxes are important. Turns out the economy is important, and he just wasn't prepared. Okay. When his business failed, one of the things that he said is, "Scoggins don't get ahead; they get by." Okay. Here's why that's important.
And your last name is Scoggins for people that didn't
that's right.
click into that.
All right. Here's why that's important. It's important because we all as human beings, most of us who grow up in a cynical environment have been basically indoctrinated into a certain level of believing what our ultimate possibilities and worth is. Let's take that a step further. I decided to go down the Ancestry.com rabbit trail, right?
You're in the system.
DNA.
You're in the system now, man.
I'm in the system, right? They got my DNA and everything. They're trying to see why I'm somewhat resilient and whatnot. But anyway, when I went down that rabbit trail, I discovered that over 400 years, in 400 years across 3 continents, that Scoggins people had never actually been financially independent. In fact, these Scoggins came from Europe to the States, specifically landed in Virginia, went ironically to North Carolina, and then for some reason, my DNA is now found in Nashville, Tennessee, which is kind of ironic, right? In 400 years, not a single one not financially free, not a single one running businesses, not a single one having a life, in what we would call a life worth living, which is living life on your terms to a certain degree, as long as it doesn't injure anybody, right? To take that a step further, in that same 400 years, I discovered they came here as a result of a penal colony because they were so poor that my ancestors shot a deer on a lord's land and then were sent to the States to now work as an indentured servant to actually work off that prison sentence or whatever it was. Huh. So from all the way from this time when I was a kid, right, and learning about my great-grandfathers, my great-great-grandfathers, and my great-father, and all this kind of stuff, I'm the only one that has taken the steps to then figure this stuff out. Mainly because of Steve. Steve was my catalyst, and I've had a lot of amazing other mentors along the way. Some are pretty well established even here in Nashville. But in also learning that same lesson, I also had this moment when I was 13 years old. We were in a busted up trailer park, and I went down to the local little park area, and I didn't really have. I was kind of a quasi person of faith, meaning at 9 years old I was going to Bible study and I was doing the Bible school and I was looking at Jesus as a cartoon and all this kind of stuff, right? So I decided to take a step at it, And I went down this park. I kneeled down on the ground under the stars. It was a fall evening, staring up at the stars and the moon. And I said, Lord, please let me be the one to break the family curse. Those words actually came out of my mouth at 13 years old. Why those specific words, I have no idea. Now, if you look, to me, it's an element of faith. Now, people don't have to share my faith, that's fine, but I'm a person of faith because I've had too many other like miracle moments to explain it away. But in that moment, at 13 years old, I was not necessarily prepared for the journey that I would go through in order to actually physically break that. Now I own, I think 7 total businesses. I employ a few hundred team members, and amazing team members who I love and admire in my own right because they do things that I can't do. Right? They're just really gifted in areas that I'm not. But more importantly, one of the things that we've done is we've generated tens of millions of dollars in revenue over the course of the lifetime. God answered that prayer. Mm-hmm. Right? So here's my takeaway to the question that you originally started with, which is why does some people kind of break free? Why do people stay cynical? So there's really two things. First of all, you have to be able to articulate to them in the language that they understand. When I talk about, hey, I was poor, I lived in a trailer park, I didn't graduate high school, I'm ADHD and dyslexic, that's one level. So they're, okay, all right, fine, whatever. But when I talk about being woken up in the middle of a night because a cockroach landed on my face and almost in my mouth, right? And someone's already living in that circumstance, and I can talk about what that cockroach feels like going across your face, or how we used to eat like fried French fries all the time in the same cooking oil that we literally would stay in the crock pot for weeks, months. They know that I've been there because you can't get that imagery without going there. So First of all, you have to it goes back to serving the person you used to be. You've got to take it to the next level where you can articulate what it was like to be in those moments to really get past the jadedness. The second thing is you have to have an idea or a concept to fully understand more than anything else, that they are where they are today because that's all they've allowed themselves to be. Okay? Now, when you understand that, all of a sudden now you have empathy, you have compassion, and now when you can articulate empathy and compassion in a focused direction, now you get attraction. When you get attraction, now you can teach the tactical side. So I know it's a long-winded answer, but if someone's looking for a breakthrough, it all starts with being able to own your story, use your story to leverage you forward rather than hold you back. That's where it starts.
Well, and I think to summarize that and to oversimplify that statement is quit making excuses. Everybody has the same opportunity. And I know that's a blanket statement, and I get that there's probably a secondary side to that argument. But you grew up poor, you grew up in an impoverished mentality, an impoverished reality, and yet overcame it because you made a decision to not use that as an excuse not to succeed. So let's talk about success, because success, the root of all success, is the name of the show, right?
Yeah.
So what is your definition of that word success?
My definition of success is living a meaningful life experience. Okay? It's funny, when you go from homelessness to all of a sudden having a level of resources that now you can choose to travel, choose to buy a nice house, choose to buy things, right? Which is, our American culture says, go get the stuff, right? Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with people getting stuff as long as the stuff doesn't own them, right? For me, I discovered I kind of what I refer to as I broke through the greed grenade, right? Because once you you kind of get indoctrinated into the greed scenario, like it's all about me, it's all about stuff, it's all about how awesome I can show myself to other people, and this kind of stuff. And you see that a lot with and I dare say it, with personal branding, right? So someone who is a personal brand, they're going to be one of two things. They're either going to be a guru or a guide. Only guides can serve you. Gurus are too focused on themselves. Guides, on the other hand, say, hey, I can teach you a better way because someone taught me a better way, right? So when you take the success, for me, success is leading a meaningful life. And to me, meaningful life is doing exactly what Steve Myrick taught me how to do, which is create a legacy that outlives me. In other words, my life's purpose and meaning is to impact so many lives that it's impossible for history to erase my name. It's impossible, right? To be on a show like this today, right? No one knows who Steve Myrick is. They didn't watch him build a massive home building company. They didn't watch him slip the $1,000 under the hush puppies and all this kind of stuff. But they do now. They do now because he passed away in 2003. And I've been fortunate enough to be on large stages. I've been fortunate enough to be on great shows like this. And at the end of the day, you very quickly realize that the thought leadership that created you and worked through you as part of this adversity is by definition the very thing that you can give to someone else as a gift. And the greatest compliment you can ever have is to have somebody else on an interview like this, or sitting down with a friend having a cup of coffee, or doing something where that person's struggling, and say, hey, let me share with you what Stephen Scoggins taught me, right? Let me share with you what the real Jason Duncan taught me, right? That is success. If you do that well, it's a crazy thing, all the other stuff flows from that.
So with that as the backdrop, I'm going to ask you this question. Do you consider yourself to be successful?
I consider myself to be successful in that I'm on the path of creating success in other people. So if I do that well, great. My life will have purpose and meaning. I'm serving the person I used to be. I'm helping entrepreneurs and C-suite professionals and the soccer moms and the hardworking dads. I'm doing all that, which is fantastic. Like that's lights me up, dude. You may have picked up on that, right? But if I lose myself along the way, meaning all of a sudden I have greater level of success through notability, through resource, and I'm not doing positive things with the notability or the resource, then I've actually let myself down, right? So it's a constant reminder, and I know you're experiencing this as your platform is exploding, right? Is this moment of understanding that there's a great responsibility with that platform. There's a running joke. I had this weird question one time I was on a show, and someone just happened to catch several of my keynotes. Not a lot of them have been filmed, ironically. We're starting to film more of them now, but they said, dude, I'm just curious, man. It doesn't matter how tacky it looks, but you always wear white shoes. Why do you wear white? I'm just curious. Like, to be sure you've got some, I know your wife's really into design. To be sure she told you that those shoes don't go with that outfit. And I said, well, it's very simple. The white shoes remind me constantly that I'm walking on holy ground. I have to admit to myself that my voice now carries weight, that my presence and authority now carries weight, and I have a responsibility to respectively steward that, right? And it doesn't matter if I'm in front of one person or 10,000. It doesn't matter. What matters is, more than anything else, is whether or not I'm going to focus on the greater good. Our entire American culture, and I dare say the world, is more focused on becoming famous, getting a bunch of stuff, right? But when it comes down to it, when life's over, where are you going and what you taking with you? Not a flipping thing, right? So why not put the best asset you have, which is all of your life experiences, all of your grit, all your tenacity, all the various frameworks and the strategies and things that you do, right? I mean, the root of all success is all about frameworks and strategies, right? So I dare say we're on similar journeys, man. I know we're brothers from another mother, so that's another long-winded answer to a great question.
I wish you would liven up a little bit,
Yeah, I know, right?
So my theory.
I probably should finish the scotch here.
My theory, and the reason I started this show, is that there are these 5 keys that every entrepreneur, just like you, just like me, some of the people listening, have used to unlock tremendous success. I mean, you've built multi-million-dollar companies. You're continuing to build your own brand that's multi-million-dollar company. My theory is that you use these 5 keys to unlock this, and so I want to run these past you and get your honest feedback on this, because I know you're a person of faith and grit and tenacity, and I want to see if you agree with this, and we'll flesh it out. So the first key, I think, is the number one thing that I find in all entrepreneurs who succeeded in a large way is passion.
I'm not passionate at all.
And so it's obvious that the emotional side of passion is present because you're animated. And if people aren't watching this on YouTube, they got to go watch your face. I mean, you're obviously passionate in terms of emotional. But the word passion really means, if you go back and look at it, means willing to endure. That's why the Passion of the Christ is called the Passion of the Christ. It wasn't that he was excited and joyful. It was because he was willing to endure for a greater cause. And so what I found is that when I interview successful people like you who've built multi-million-dollar successful companies, that they had a willingness to endure when others would have quit. Do you find that that's been part of the key to your success?
I can tell you that every major shift of my businesses, doesn't matter which one, every major shift came at the result of a first crushing moment on the front side. Like, one of the things I'll share with you really fast is when I was first building my construction business, one of the things that happened was I discovered I was a crappy leader. Like, I was defensive, I was argumentative. I wouldn't call it hateful, but I was sharp-tongued. And it was all based out of fear and insecurity. I didn't want my team to know that I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Like, I was winging it. I'm a high school dropout, dude. I'd never been to college. Like, here I am operating at that time like a $10 or $15 million business with, 10 or 15 team members at the time. And, they're looking to me to solve the problems. And I'm looking behind me like, who do I ask? Like, so what do? You make up crap on the fly. And one of the greatest crushings I ever had actually came from one of the folks here in Nashville, Ramsey, right? So I got to know Dave and Sharon pretty well over the last decade, but it was 2011, and I went to Entrepreneurship, one of their conferences, Master Series it was called at the time, and I proceeded to get my teeth kicked in for 2 straight days about this is what a leader is, and Dave's really animated himself and whatever. And I began to realize that, oh crap, my leadership has responsibility, So that was one of the crushings that happened in me to create something through me. Another crushing that I had is, unfortunately, in 2017, I went through a situation where, I'll say alleged, we'll call it alleged, but I went through an alleged embezzlement thing where my former executive team had embezzled, call it well into the 7 figures from me. I'm a very loyal, very trusting guy by nature. I may not do everything right, like perfectly. Like I'm a far better leader today than I ever was a decade ago. But I've tried to put myself in a position to always learn from every single mistake. And when you talk about passion, I think enduring, I think you're looking at always being willing to learn from every single mistake. And I feel like if that is the ultimate goal, then you will have more competency and competence to actually endure anything you need to endure, because it's not about an outward journey, it's about an inward journey that flows to the outward. And I think that every entrepreneur, I agree with you, man, passion, enduring, like it's a must, because there's no such thing as a rocket ship to the top, right? You might see success here, but I guarantee you, when you talk to them, they got battle scars, they'll roll up their sleeves, they'll have scars everywhere, they've got bloody noses and stuff that they've had. I mean, that's what real entrepreneurship is.
So passion is the first key, and so thank you for that good story. Now, the second key is being in the right place at the right time. I find that entrepreneurs, and it's not luck, they make their own luck, they get into those places. But can you think of a right place, right time, besides the Grand Cherokee and the air conditioning with Steve? Because I know that's going to be the third key, which is knowing the right people. Yeah. And so if you want to go ahead and talk about these at the same time, right place, right time, and knowing the right people, did that play a part in your story? And I know the answer is yes, but tell me a little bit about how that worked out for you.
Yeah, no, the answer is totally yes. Now, I would say it this way. People a lot of time are looking for luck, right? They're looking for, as you're building a rapidly growing personal brand, one of the things that one of the, I guess, tendencies are is we want the one interview to pop, we want the one thing to go viral, and to make all of a sudden make it easier for us to connect with people, right? I'm sure you've discovered, as I've discovered, that it's incremental relationship, incremental relationship, incremental relationship, incremental relationship. So, one of the people that I've become, I think we're good friends, right? Is Evan Carmichael. So Evan Carmichael's got a pretty large YouTube presence. He's well into the millions.
Yeah, a little bit.
I think he's close to 3 million now.
He's got a couple more than me.
Right. So yeah. Well, here's the crazy thing is there's another YouTube personality, a guy by the name of Tim Schmoyer on YouTube that teaches YouTube content, and so I bought his mastermind, right? Because I was trying to learn YouTube and trying to figure out, all right, well, how do I use this YouTube? And the YouTube, if you hear me say the YouTube, that tells you how old I am. But if I go and do that, then I'm going to get strategy. Well, it was about 2 months in, and Tim comes to me and says, "Dude, you need to know Evan." I'm like, "Evan? Who's Evan?" He's like, "Evan Carmichael, man. He's like the thought leadership guy when it comes to YouTube. Like he's not only is Evan friends with, but Evan understands YouTube at a deeper level than anybody else that he personally knew." I'm like, "Well, okay, cool." So he makes the introduction. I didn't ask him to make the introduction, but what did happen before that is I made sure that I was a person of character and integrity, regardless of the situation, regardless of who's in front of me. And because of that, that's opened more doors than I can count. Because I don't go into situations looking for them to do something for me. I go into situations saying, teach me, help me understand, help me learn. And more importantly, what value can I bring to you? Evan's got a large established platform, okay? But I had to ask him one time, I said, what can I do for you, right? Just so happens he was in the middle of an amazing book launch. That was a really successful book launch. In fact, shameless plug, Built to Serve, amazing book, seriously amazing book, right? So I bought a bunch of his books, right? I bought a lot of his books. He autographed all of them. I've given them out to our audience as gifts because I believe in what he's doing, right? He didn't ask me to buy books. He didn't ask me to share his books with the audience. I felt like it added value to the audience in which I was creating, and it had skill sets that the audience actually needed to win at life. So as a result, right place, right time, and right relationships all comes down to, I think, number one, being a person of character and integrity regardless of what's going on. All because you have the ability to shortcut the process does not mean you should. In fact, the people that shortcut the process oftentimes are the ones that end up in ruin the quickest. Okay? The second thing is making sure that you add value just as much as you consume value from someone else. Right? And the third thing is above all, never badmouth anybody else in existence, regardless of your opinion of how they disagree with you or agree with you on anything else. You know, in this thought leadership space, we've both seen thought leaders who are really great. They live out their principles. They live out their life. They live out their business. And we've also seen people who are showboating, right? It's not my place to go to the marketplace and say, this is a showboating person, this person's real. What I can do, however, is, take an Evan Carmichael, for example, like, dude, this guy's legit. Like, I got to know this guy. His heart's in the right place. He's a great businessman, which he doesn't get enough credit for. Like, seriously, because he's so focused on shining the light on all these other influencers and all these other thought leaders that he believes in. But the dude's smart. He's crazy smart, right? And I think that kind of tackles both of those. Like, in order to be at the right place at the right time, you have to be the right person in the right place at the right time. Yeah. I had this guy one time. He reached out to me. He said, it was actually in a clubhouse room. We were chatting. He goes, I'm doing all this stuff, and I keep finding myself in these different influencer environments. This guy's being invited into certain environments that people would die to be part of. Well, die is a strong word, but they would sacrifice a great deal to get there. And I said, dude, why are you struggling with your insecurity about you adding value in that room? Why? He's like, well, I just don't know if I'm enough. I mean, dude, you were invited to the room. The fact that you were invited to the room says that you already possess enough capacity and competency to be in that room. Stand up with your head up and your shoulders back and act like it.
That's good advice.
Seriously, I mean, what keeps us from connecting with higher levels of top performers, which is the people we need to learn from, is our insecurities. When you understand that your seat at the table is your seat at the table and your job is to do the best you can with that seat at the table, then all of a sudden the other seats at the other tables begin to open up over time. People have to let go at this thing of this one podcast, this one YouTube, this one thing is going to explode me. You might have a lucky draw and something might go viral, but then you got to support the virality, right? So the best thing you can do is be consistent.
Yeah.
And that opens all the doors.
Well, you used the word incremental earlier in our conversation. You're about incremental progress towards those things. And I think that knowing the right people and being in the right place at the right time is an incremental thing. And I can think about my story as an entrepreneur. I went from pastor to school teacher to accidental entrepreneur. And I could think about when I started, the couple of people that helped me get launched into that. Some were positive influences, some were negative influences. But they were, in terms of on the totem pole of their ability to get me where I needed to be, they were at the bottom of that totem pole. That doesn't mean their value wasn't good because they got me that spot. And then the next group of people I met got me to a higher level and higher level. And I think that's incremental for all of us because those that are wanting to that virality, as you said, that one pop that gets them all the way to the end, that's not realistic.
It's not realistic, and and then once that happens, all of a sudden now you're chasing the next viral.
Yeah.
Right, which means you take your eye off the ball of actually serving.
That's correct.
If you serve well, you'll be rewarded well. Let me say that again. If you serve well, you will be rewarded well.
Yeah. Well, that's what Jesus taught. He's like, hey, man, the greatest among you is a servant. Like the one who serves is the one who's going to be great. Now, the world doesn't tell you that. The world doesn't immediately reward that. But at the end of the day, I think everybody who sat across this table from me on this podcast would fall into that camp of, I served a lot of people, did a lot of things, and I'm now sitting in a place of success that I wouldn't have been able to get to had I not served. Now, the irony of that is that I maybe with rare exception, people don't seek to serve for the purpose of getting the reward, because those who do that aren't really serving. They have ulterior motives.
Exactly.
So let me ask you about the last two keys of success. So we've got passion, right place, right time, knowing the right people. The last two are a little hard. The fourth is the hardest, I think, and it's preparation. And I put them all in P's. Passion, place, people, preparation, and plan is the last one. But what I mean by preparation is you got to have the know-how to pull it off.
Yeah.
And so with you building a tremendously successful coaching business, Transform You and everything else you got going on, you couldn't do like that. It took a lot of preparation and know how to get there. And then the fifth P, the plan, is the financial resources to deploy that you had access to be successful. Because you could have all the other four P's, but if you don't have the financial resource and the plan to deploy them to pull it off, so you can't succeed. So Stephen, in your story, how did preparation and plan play into your story of success?
So I believe there's really just a handful of great questions in life. All right. So the first one is all about you. So who am I? Why am I here? And what do I do about it? Okay. Those are three very powerful questions that you need to sit and study, right? You need to research and seek to find the answers to those things. Those three questions are ones that we're very gifted at in solving through the Transform You systems. Okay. The other ones are just as important. What do you want? Why do you want it? And why is it important that you get it? Okay. The reason that it's important is because that lays out the preparation side of things. All right. So my first business, it was very much gunslinger, like I see a problem, I can fix it, let me go, like do all this kind of stuff, right? As I began to develop other organizations, both small and large, I very quickly understand that I got to have people who are better at doing things than I am in any given position in order to do that, which is a methodology of preparation. You have to have frameworks and processes. One of the reasons Transform You has been so stinking successful for so many people is the simple fact is its actual framework. Like it's not the understand your why, which you need to do, but it's not like understand your why. It's like let's work on the how. Like what should you be focused on? How should you actually tactically take this step and this step and this step and this step? The problem is you can't lay out a plan until you understand what it is you want, why it is you want it, and what you're willing to sacrifice to get it, okay? Now, I'm a big believer in answering those questions, but on top of that, asking myself, what is my end goal for the next 12 months, and then working backwards, okay? Now, I like guardrails, because I know that I'm about to drive back to Raleigh, North Carolina with my son, right? My youngest son's here with us today, and we're gonna be in the car for the next 8.5 hours, okay? I know that I have to keep my hands on the steering wheel. I know I've got to keep my hands on the foot, on the pedal or the gas or the brake, depending on what's going on. I also know I have to stay in my lane, which means you can't be the typical ADHD squirrel, right, and running off to the side, which I have a propensity to do, right? But what I have discovered is guardrails are important. So what I do was when I understand where it is I'm trying to go, the ultimate goal, I break it down into what we call micro milestones. Other people call it micro goals, whatever you want to call it. It's the same stinking thing, right? But in order to make sure that I actually take the actions I have to take, I put what's known as a reinforceable routine around it. So I prep my day to execute on specific things that help me figure out my year. So I'll give you an example. We've got Transform You Live in October of 2021, okay? I've got significant resources in building out the stage, building out the technology. We're going to be able to live stream thousands of people in all at the same time, but also speaker fees and relationships that I've been developing over the last year with Tom Bilyeu and Lisa Bilyeu and Evan, like I mentioned before, Anthony Trucks, Amberly Lago, and so many more. Ray Higdon, another one, another of the family kind of thing. And there's a lot going on that event, but I started planning that thing a year ago, right? In so much that I know that I had to have a certain level of content already put out to actually get traction. My email list has to be a certain size. And also I can serve people at scale, right? What does that mean on my daily interaction? Well, I wake up at 5 o'clock every stinking day. I did it this morning. Okay, I go down to this morning I went down to the Weston gym and worked out in the gym in the Weston, and I went back to my room, and then I spent some time while I'm typically at the gym. I'm studying, and I break up my life in what I refer to as the 8 pillars of life, which is another unique spin-off of Zig Ziglar's Will of Life, because I added a new thing called contribution. I think if you're not focused on contribution, unfortunately, you're going to find yourself in a selfish nature, which means you end up dying off without what you want. And I pick a thing. Like, for example, Mondays, I'm studying my emotional well-being. How can I make my emotional self better? On Tuesdays, I'm studying to say, well, how to make my spiritual life better? What can I develop? On Wednesdays, it's finance, right? On Thursday, it's actual physicality. It's not, that's a day that I personally do intermittent fasting and stuff like that. I'll just fast to kind of, to get all my levels back kind of in check and stuff like that, because, I like cookies, and, I got to, clean up the pipes sometime. But at the end of the day, there's always a predefined, pre-decided methodology of how I'm going to execute and ultimately receive an outcome. Most people don't do that at all, even though it's one of the easiest things that they could do right now to apply to their life now, right? How hard is it to say that I need to save up $300 today? Say I need to save up $300 and make a decision today to not go out for the extra cup of coffee. It's not hard. But yet we're intimidated by it because we have to sacrifice the things that we have for the things that we want.
So these keys evidently have shown up in your life as an entrepreneur.
And it's
a few times, actually. So talk about what you're doing right now. And I know that the timing may not be right when this releases for your conference that you're doing in October of 21. But what are you doing that conference for? What's its purpose? What are you doing? And then talk about the larger build out around what you're doing as a coach and as a public figure.
Yeah, so the easy answer is Transform You Live is the culmination of 30 plus years of setbacks and adversities, of testing the methodologies and the principles that both work and that didn't work, and the ones that were missing in the middle that are the actual frameworks that people need to follow. One of the things that I think is that I see missing in the marketplace as it relates to thought leadership is there's lots of thought leaders who can take one idea and talk about that one idea. Maybe, and great, get it. A one idea can change your life. Don't get me wrong. What I think is missing from the marketplace, and what I'm hoping to bring on a regular basis, which is why I created Transform You Live, and all the various things off like Transform You Online and some of the other things we got cooking. The reason I created it is because I want to be the voice of the tactical. Because I find that as thought leaders, various events you go to, you get supercharged. All of a sudden you awaken your possibilities, which have been dormant. You start dreaming again, which all of that is great. But then when you leave the event, you're like, okay, well, I guess that was all hype. What do I do now? Because I believe that motivation without application is like totally meaningless, And I say that from personal experience. I've been to rah-rah things. I've been to, back in the day, I was heavily involved in various network marketing. Amway was my go-to back in the day. Nothing wrong with Amway, by the way, if that's your mode of business that you're doing. It's just a different vehicle. But in that moment, I would go to these large events and I would get like inspired. I was able to share with Les Brown recently, I had him on the show, and share with him how It's Possible speech that he did at an Amway conference. Like I was just fresh out of being homeless. Like it literally lit me up, right? But there was nothing after that to actually break it down and say, okay, Monday morning at 8 a.m., you're going to do this. At 10 a.m., you're going to do this. At noon, you're going to do this. And what I've discovered is that one of the reasons that Transform Your Life has been so successful in the Transform programs in general is because it's the tactical. All you've got to do is show up. That's all you've got to do. The hard work of thinking and overcomplicating and what if it does it, what if, it's all done for you. You don't have to do that anymore, right? So Transform Your Life was a birth child of bringing in 12 to 13 amazing speakers, all of which who have amazing stories, but have them focus on one specific thing that is actually taught as a complete journey throughout the course of 3 days. So for example, one of our frameworks, and this is very super high level, I can deep dive in like 6 more shows, is what we refer to as GROW, the 4 phases of transformation, right? Something Steve Myrick actually taught me. First, phase 1, G, gain perspective. Phase 2, remove roadblocks. Phase 3, organize and plan. Phase 4, my favorite, work the freaking plan, right? Now, Steve taught me that a long time ago. It just so happens it says grow, which means if you're stuck in life, what do you need to do more than anything else? You want to literally exhibit transformation, you need to grow.
And go over those letters again, because I thought that was good.
Yeah. So the G is gain perspective, right? So how many different ways can you look at your circumstances, what you need to know, who you need to be surrounded by, what you need to learn? How many different ways and different perspectives can you get on that, okay? Number 2 is remove roadblocks. Once you've done the gain perspective side of things, you're looking for the things that are holding you back. I mentioned the Scoggins don't get ahead, they get by. The question that Steve, what's the difference between a rich man and a poor man? It's the way they think, right? You have to look for the things, because here's the thing, the dots are in you, right? Guides, like I'm trying to do, and I know that we both share a passion for, are doing nothing more than trying to help you connect the dots, right? So if the R's remove roadblocks, that's obviously why gain perspective is first. You can identify the stinking roadblocks. Once you identify the roadblocks, you can work on removing them, which is actually part of organizing your plan. And then it's just a matter of just doing the work.
That's good.
Just doing the work, man.
And so this is another Steve Myrick.
Dude, I've got so much Steve Myrick stuff, it's not even funny.
So I wonder if there's a person in your life who's a right person.
All right.
There's so many people like that. So what are you doing for people on a day-to-day basis? How could people work with you? Like, what are you doing right now that somebody says, man, I love this Steve guy. Stephen Scoggins guy is amazing. How do I get in touch with him? Like, what would they do?
No, it's a great question. Thank you. Well, there's really 2 ways to get in touch with me. So Stephen_Scoggins, that's with a PH, 2 G's and Scoggins. So Stephen_Scoggins at Instagram. I'm on Facebook and Instagram and Clubhouse and Twitter and all this stuff. I happen to like respond most in Facebook and Instagram because they're kind of connected now. But more importantly, you can go to StephenScoggins.com. But I think more importantly than that, if you're the person that I used to be in the very beginning stages, you have 2 things in common with the person I used to be. One, you were broken, and you were broke, which means you can't afford some of the things that we offer. Now, everything we offer is intentionally put to make it the most affordable as possible. You go to a 3-day conference where you got Tom Bilyeu and Lisa Bilyeu and Anthony Trucks and all these guys come in, you're paying $6,000, $7,000 a ticket, right? Even our live event tickets are like $1,200. Well, we have virtual ones that are $200. That's done intentionally because I want to serve the person that I used to be. Now, if you were in that position where maybe you can't like afford to come get your life wrecked in a good way, like transformed, then great. I've got YouTube, I've got Instagram, I've got all kinds of free stuff that can help you get enough traction to get you going, to get you excited about your life, to get you excited about your business, get you excited about your relationship and your finances, that you can begin to get some traction. And then we're here to meet you where you are and then work with you along the way to make sure you're successful. At the end of the day, it's not about us, it's not about me, it's not about any of that stuff. Again, my purpose in life is to serve the person I used to be and create a legacy that outlives me. The only way I do that is being super effective at helping people transform their own lives. So that's the easiest way.
So there are lots and lots of people who listen to this show on a regular basis. You know, we release now a couple times a week. And many of them are already super successful entrepreneurs that have eclipsed your success, my success combined. Like they're in the stratosphere. Others are on the other end of that spectrum. They're just starting out, or they haven't even started because they don't know what to do first, what to do next. What would be your advice to that person? Like, I don't know what to, maybe they've gotten started or almost starting, but that young entrepreneur, young not in age, but like in their experience as an entrepreneur, what would you say to them? What's your advice?
Do what you love, which may not be necessarily what you know, right? So I developed a construction business because I understood it. That's what I knew. It taught me that my construction company was actually a personal development company masquerading as a construction company, right? What I love is personal development. What I love is transforming lives. What I love, right? And certain things will be vehicles to lead you to that direction, okay? So for that entrepreneur, I would say do what you love, serve in the best way possible, so much so that it gets someone else's attention and they want to pay you for it. Then build your business around that. Otherwise, you may build a business for a decade or more and realize that you just created a big job for yourself. Yes, it's got resources coming out. Maybe it allows you to have some nice things, but you're not happy. Which I think actually talks to our other audience that we mentioned before. And you and I both know these types of people who are incredibly successful, right? From every world standard you can possibly have. They travel via private jet and they own teams and all kinds of stuff. Crazy thing is a lot of those folks aren't necessarily as happy as they want to be, right? I discovered along the way that one of the things that people have for that group, I would say this, There was a study done, and I'll have to give you the link to it at a later time so you can kind of see the study, but there was a study done that people that achieve 1% level and higher level of success, financial success, stewardship, etc., have 8 mastery level skills that they can teach someone else, a mentor or like a mentee, okay? Of that, only 72% of them, only 32% of them actually do it, which means all the experience, everything they've learned, everything that they can add value to create a better tomorrow than a today kind of scenario, they're not sharing. So for the early entrepreneur, it's do what you love, do it so well people pay you for it, and build a business around that. For the later entrepreneur that's already crazy successful, make sure that your mark is not tied to your wealth and your meaning is not tied to your wealth. Instead, take those 8 things, whatever those 8 mastery level skills are, choose 5 or 6 people and pour into them like Steve did into me, and watch a difference be made that you cannot fully understand.
I love that. I love the passion behind it too, man. That's
Can't help
exciting.
myself.
Well, I think, I know you didn't do this on purpose, but my personal, my mission is to help entrepreneurs get out of the day-to-day operations so that they can go live their passion. And so many of those people, like you were just mentioning, that second group, they're successful. They've created multi-million-dollar businesses, 7, 8, 9, 10 figures, in some cases, but they're still tied down. They wanted to become their own boss. They wanted to get freedom of time, energy, and money, but they're their own employee, and they're stuck to doing day-to-day 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week working in that business. So what I do is I teach them how to exit without exiting. So I know you didn't do that on purpose, but that's exactly what I do, is to help that end. And I think your advice to that person on the front end is so good. Do what you love, but it may not be what you know. I like what you said. It may not be what you know right now. You love something, but you don't know how to do it. Well, get prepared. That's one of the P's, right?
Yeah.
Get prepared, and then come up with a plan to deploy that, because that's where you will make the most impact.
That's right.
Any final comments, thoughts, or anything you want to share with the audience about your experience and your story? Because I know there's lots more.
Oh man, we can talk for hours, and I know we'll probably have to do follow-up shows just for fun. I definitely got to get you on Stuck to Unstoppable in the near future.
Well, talk about your show then. Go ahead.
Yeah,
talk
I mean,
about
Stuck to Unstoppable is we've kind of been ironically been talking all about it. So I mean, there's Stuck is not making progress. Unstoppable is consistently making progress, right? It's not necessarily guns a-blazing and Braveheart, like, freedom! It could be that, but it's not necessarily that. Stuck to Unstoppable is where I interview, much like yourself, thought leaders at a variety of different levels of success. We've had, Grant Cardone, Evan. We've had Les Brown. We've had Jay Abraham. We've had some amazing guests that have, they've all taught me something unique. Crazy thing is we've also had guests on that I just thought were awesome people that have little to no notability, that drop mega bombs of knowledge because they're so focused on doing it, right? That they're not worried about trying to build out a personal brand and all this kind of stuff. It's just kind of happening organically, much like yourself. So I think at the end of the day, my closing words would be probably something along the lines: if you can do this, don't give up, and more importantly, surround yourself with competent people. And as you go through that process, I'm even right now, I'm having to look at one of my team members and like, okay, do I really need to is that person really competent in that particular role? And I may have to change them out, because if I don't change them out, potentially, then what I do is I open myself up for problems, right? So look for the competency there, and then kind of keep going. Just don't give up, man.
So Stuck to Unstoppable,
Yep.
And they can listen to that where?
YouTube, Apple, you know the deal. Any podcast platform whatsoever. Much like you, we're always looking for 5-star ratings and all that good stuff. We're trying to serve, man.
Well, the podcast world is so amazing. I'm whoever invented the concept. I don't know who came up with the idea of the podcast, but it's, I learned so much through indirect mentors like you, who host amazing shows and then have amazing guests on. And I know that's what you want to do with your show. That's what I want to do with this show. And I thank you for coming to Nashville. Thank you for agreeing to be on my show. And I do look forward to getting on your show at some time in the future. Good luck with the conference.
Yeah.
And I know you're excited about that. And some of the names you mentioned, I know some of these people. And what's funny is that I don't think you knew that I knew some of those people, and vice versa. But after the show, I want to ask you some questions about some of this, because it's very interesting how we, even though we're not running directly in the same circles,
Yeah.
we kind of know some of the same people, which probably means they're the right people.
That's right.
Or we're the right people. Or both.
All the above, right?
Or both. Well, Stephen, thank you for being here, man. It's
Dude,
been an
totally my
honor.
honor. It's such a cool, man, the Standard place, such a cool place, dude. Thanks again.
Yeah. Anytime you come to Nashville, you look me up. We're going to get together, have a little drink, and have some good food here, man.
Done, man, done. Absolutely.
Well, there you go, folks. So every time we have a conversation on this show with somebody like Stephen, we find out these little nuggets of information about how these 5 keys of success can unlock not only their success, but how it can unlock your success too. So continue to listen to this show. Continue to tune in every week. We're releasing twice a week now, 2 shows a week, where I'm talking to these amazing entrepreneurs about their keys to success, how they did what they did. And if you've got somebody that you know that would want to be on the show, or maybe you are that successful entrepreneur that could sit on the couch across from me and have a glass of bourbon, maybe smoke a cigar, and or if you don't want to do that, that's fine too. But we could talk about your story to success, because these stories on the root of all success, just like Stephen's, are inspiring people just like you to reach another level of impact in this world. And if we actually operated out of what we can do, think about how much different, how much better this world would be. And God knows we need some help. Right now, this is the craziest time in history that at least not a time in history, but in my lifetime. I was talking to a friend of mine this morning. We have coffee on Wednesday morning every week. Today's Wednesday. And I was talking to him about how the generations have gone through these weird, crazy things. Well, this is the thing of our generation, the deals that are going on internationally, the pandemic, et cetera. So make sure that you're living to your fullest potential. Listen to these stories on the root of all success. And if you are an entrepreneur who wants to learn how to exit without exiting like I did, and like Stephen, he said at the beginning, he's got, I think he said 7 or 8 businesses. Like he's like me, I've got 8 as well. Well, I don't operate all those. I've set those up in a way that I can be the owner investor rather than the owner operator. And there are very specific ways that you can do that. And if you know how to do that, it opens up an entire different life for you to go live your passion, to do what you're excited about. I call my course that I do, it's a 12-week course, the Exit Accelerator Group Coaching Cohort. And it's 12 weeks, 12 entrepreneurs. We do 8 live sessions with me to take you through the 4 steps of how to learn how to exit without exiting, how to get out of the weeds, how to become the owner investor rather than the owner operator. Go to exitwithoutexiting.com, exitwithoutexiting.com to read more. And if you will send me a DM through Instagram, I will give you a coupon code for some money off. All you got to do is send me a DM, say, I listened to you on the root of all success. When you were talking to Stephen, I want that discount code because I want to be in your Exit Accelerator Group Coaching Cohort. I'm the real Jason Duncan. Please tune in again next time when we talk to another amazingly successful entrepreneur just like Stephen. I will see you next time. And until then, remember, Jesus is the King.
Thank you for listening to another edition of The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, we invite you to visit therootofallsuccess.com to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Take charge of your business. Grow it from great to incredible. Join us again next time here on The Root of All Success.